Shamanic Era. The Shamanic Era signifies the earliest instance of spiritual awakening in human history, dating back to prehistoric times, well before the advent of organized religions or written languages. This period was characterized by an innate and profound connection between humans and the natural environment. Ancients believed that all aspects of nature, animals, rivers, trees, mountains, and even the wind, were imbued with spirit. This perspective is termed animism, and it formed the basis for nearly every spiritual system that followed. Shamans rose as the first spiritual guides, mystics, healers, and mediators between the physical and spiritual dimensions, often entering altered states of consciousness through drumming, dancing, fasting, or the use of entheogens such as psychedelic plants. They would traverse unseen realms to engage with spirits, gain insight, heal the ill, and uphold harmony between humanity and nature. These occurrences were viewed not as supernatural phenomena, but as integral aspects of existence. During this time, spirituality was communal and experiential. Rituals were performed in caves near fires or at consecrated natural sites, frequently involving masks, symbols, and trance-inducing ceremonies. All elements, life and death, dreams and visions, animals and ancestors, were interconnected. The Shamanic Era serves as a reminder that ancient human spirituality was not about dogmatic beliefs, but rather centered around relationships, intuition, and profound respect for the earth. Early Pagan Era. The early pagan era, spanning approximately 10,000 BCE to 30,000 BCE, coincided with the rise of agriculture and the establishment of permanent settlements. As humans began cultivating land and relied on seasonal patterns, their spiritual emphasis shifted toward honoring the earth, the sky, and the natural forces that nurture life. This period witnessed the emergence of pagan belief systems, which regarded nature not merely as a resource, but as a vibrant representation of the divine. The earth was considered a mother, the sun a source of life, and the moon a revered timekeeper. Spirituality became deeply connected with the cycles of agriculture, fertility, climate, and seasonal changes. During this era, the veneration of goddesses was prevalent, symbolizing the significance of fertility, motherhood, and nature's creative forces. Ceremonial rites were conducted to guarantee bountiful crops, safe childbirths, and safeguarding against natural calamities. Communities erected stone circles, altars, and temples to pay homage to deities associated with the changing seasons, animals, rivers, and celestial bodies. The divine was viewed in a polytheistic framework, with numerous gods and goddesses embodying distinct elements of life and nature. Spiritual leaders, often priestesses, druids, or tribal elders, facilitated rituals during solstices, equinoxes, and lunar movements. The early pagan period marks an era when spirituality was intricately linked to existence and the divine was experienced through a direct connection with the earth. The Mythic Era, spanning approximately from 3000 BCE to 1000 BC. The Mythic Era signifies a significant evolution in human spirituality, transitioning from oral traditions to structured mythologies that elucidate the cosmos, divine principles, human existence, and life's beginnings. As civilizations like ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, Greece, and China became more intricate, so too did their spiritual frameworks. Gods and goddesses were integrated into complex pantheons, and myths served as vessels for encoding moral teachings, natural laws, and cosmic realities. Religion transitioned to a centralized system, often linked with rulers and state authority, leading to the creation of sacred texts. In this time frame, the divine was not merely present in nature. It manifested through potent deities who governed creation, destruction, warfare, love, mortality, and fate. Tales of gods such as Ra, Enki, Indra, Zeus, and Marduk detailed everything from seasonal changes to human afflictions. These myths served not merely as entertainment, they constituted sacred narratives that influenced people's perceptions of the world and their roles within it. Through myth, humanity discovered a sense of order amidst chaos and found meaning in the unknown. Temples were established to serve as abodes for deities, and priests became dedicated spiritual intermediaries. Rituals, sacrifices, and celebrations were organized formally. Cosmic occurrences like eclipses, floods, or droughts were seen as manifestations of divine intent. This period also saw the emergence of sacred texts such as the Rig Veda, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and early sections of the Torah. The Axial Age, stretching from roughly 800 BCE to 200 BCE, is recognized as one of the most pivotal epochs in the evolution of human spirituality. Coined by the philosopher Karl Jaspers, this era marked a simultaneous and independent rise of moral philosophy, self-examination, and spiritual enlightenment across various regions of the globe. In areas ranging from India to China, Greece to Persia and Israel, thinkers and spiritual leaders began to scrutinize the essence of reality, the self, and the divine. This transition shifted humanity from myth-based religions toward inward transformation and universal truths. Notable figures during the Axial Age included the Buddha in India, Confucius and Lao Tzu in China, Hebrew prophets in Israel, Zoroaster in Persia, and Greek philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Pythagoras. Despite their vastly different cultural backgrounds, they all highlighted the importance of self-awareness, compassion, justice, and the belief that the divine or ultimate truth could be accessed through personal experience, intellect, or ethical living. This marked a significant turning point as spirituality began to focus more on the inner self rather than external rituals. Religious traditions such as Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, and Greek philosophy either came into being or were profoundly refined during this period. These systems taught that individuals have a crucial role in shaping their destinies through moral choices, and that wisdom and virtue could help overcome suffering, injustice, and ignorance. The Axial Age laid a foundational framework for personal spirituality, ethical monotheism, metaphysics, and later developments in mystical and religious reform. The mystical era of religion marked a significant time when established faiths consolidated their beliefs while concurrently inspiring influential mystical movements that highlighted the importance of personal connection with the divine. While traditional religions prioritized structure, authority, and adherence to doctrine, mystics pursued a direct internal experience of God or ultimate reality. During this period, Christianity, Islam, and Mahayana Buddhism expanded, and traditions like Jewish Kabbalah, Sufism, and Hindu Vanta deepened. Mysticism in this age often arose in response to strict dogma. Mystics contended that spiritual truths couldn't be entirely encapsulated in texts or organizations. They needed to be deeply felt, lived, and experienced within one's soul. Prominent figures like Jesus of Nazareth, Rumi, Plotinus, Gregory of Nyssa, and Padmasambhava epitomized this perspective. Their teachings conveyed themes of divine love, inner illumination, unity with the cosmos, and the soul's journey towards transcendence. Monasteries, temples, and Sufi lodges evolved into hubs for contemplation, meditation, prayer, and artistic expression. Mystical literature, including the Cloud of Unknowing, the Bhagavad Gita, Taoist alchemical texts, and Sufi poetry, illuminated symbolic pathways to inner awakening. These teachings frequently employed metaphors, paradoxes, and visionary language to articulate the ineffable oneness with God, nirvana, or the eternal source of all existence. This era underscored a universal yearning for a direct connection to the sacred beyond intermediaries. Despite often facing persecution from religious leaders, mystics across various traditions tapped into the same spiritual current, recognizing that true awakening arises not solely through belief, but through inner transformation and direct divine experience. The Esoteric Renaissance. The Esoteric Renaissance, spanning approximately from 1200 to 1600 CE, was a revival of hidden knowledge, mystical philosophy, and inner spiritual exploration that thrived in Europe during the late medieval and early modern eras. Mystical forms of Christianity, deism, pantheism, and natural religion started to gain traction. Enlightenment thinkers such as Spinoza and Voltaire championed the idea of a divine presence found in nature, reason, and moral principles rather than within ceremonies or clergy. Meanwhile, artists like William Blake boldly challenged religious orthodoxy through his poetry and visionary artwork. During this time, secret societies like the Freemasons and Rosicrucians thrived, providing initiatory experiences aimed at enlightenment, integrating symbolism, mysticism, and philosophical exploration. These organizations frequently endorsed ideals of personal transformation, universal brotherhood, and resistance against oppression. The period spanning from the 1800s to the early 1900s, known as the Occult Revival and Eastern Influence Era, marked a resurgence of spiritual interest as individuals became disenchanted with materialism and strict religious frameworks. In response, many seekers turned inward, rekindling age-old mystical traditions and delving into Eastern wisdom. This time saw the resurgence of practices such as Hermeticism, alchemy, tarot, and ritual magic, which were now positioned as instruments for spiritual growth rather than mere superstition. Prominent figures like Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley, alongside organizations like the Theosophical Society and the Golden Dawn, propelled occult teachings into the spotlight. This era served as a conduit between Eastern and Western thought, bridging science and mysticism, as well as introspection and external knowledge, thereby laying the foundation for contemporary spiritual movements that prioritize consciousness and personal development. The New Age movement, spanning the 1960s to the early 2000s, represented an extensive spiritual awakening, merging ancient insights, modern psychology, and alternative healing into a uniquely personalized journey of self-exploration and inner growth. This movement emerged as part of the larger countercultural revolution of the 1960s, when many individuals began to reject conventional religion, strict scientific principles, and materialistic perspectives in search of personal significance, elevated consciousness, and a sense of global unity. Mystical Christianity, deism, pantheism, and natural religion started to gain traction. Enlightenment thinkers like Spinoza and Voltaire posited a concept of God embedded in nature, reason, and moral law rather than within rituals or clergy. Figures such as William Blake boldly challenged established religious norms through their poetry and visionary art. This period also witnessed the flourishing of secret societies like the Freemasons and Rosicrucians, which provided initiatory pathways to enlightenment that wove together symbolism, mysticism, and philosophical exploration. These organizations frequently advocated for ideals such as personal transformation, universal brotherhood, and defiance against oppression. The Occult Revival and the influence of Eastern philosophies from the 1800s to the early 1900s marked a phase of reinvigorated spiritual inquiry, arising as individuals became disenchanted with materialism and strict religious frameworks. As a reaction, seekers turned inward, reviving age-old mystical traditions and delving into Eastern wisdom. This period heralded the resurgence of practices like Hermeticism, alchemy, tarot, and ritual magic, now perceived as instruments for spiritual advancement rather than remnants of superstition. Prominent figures such as Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley, alongside organizations like the Theosophical Society and the Golden Dawn, brought occult insights into the public consciousness. This era served as a connector between the East and West, merging science and mysticism along with inner and outer understanding, laying the foundations for contemporary spiritual movements centered on consciousness and self-transformation. The New Age movement, spanning from the 1960s to the early 2000s, represented a significant spiritual awakening that fused ancient wisdom, modern psychological insights, and alternative healing practices into a deeply personalized journey of self-discovery and inner change. This movement emerged as part of the larger countercultural revolution of the 1960s, during which many individuals began to distance themselves from conventional religion, rigid scientific paradigms, and materialistic perspectives, seeking instead personal meaning, elevated consciousness, and global unity. At the core of the New Age philosophy was the conviction that humanity was transitioning into a new era, known as the Age of Aquarius, characterized by spiritual growth, harmony, and enlightenment. This movement drew extensively from Eastern religions, including Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as Western esoteric traditions, indigenous spirituality, astrology, mysticism, channeling, and even theories about extraterrestrial life. It highlighted the belief that divinity resides within every individual and that through practices such as meditation, energy healing, like Reiki, crystal work, visualization, yoga, and affirmations, individuals could tap into their authentic potential. The Age of Consciousness, spanning from the early 2000s to the present day, marks a worldwide transformation toward inner awareness, personal change, and elevated states of consciousness. In contrast to previous periods that centered on deities or rituals, this era focuses on consciousness itself as the origin of spiritual experiences, drawing inspiration from neuroscience, meditation, plant medicine, and Eastern practices like yoga and mindfulness. Spirituality has become increasingly individualistic. Tools that are psychological and holistic, such as breathwork, shadow work, lucid dreaming, and energy healing, reveal a longing for profound healing and genuineness. As the world becomes more disconnected, individuals now pursue truth through personal experience guided by intuition instead of dogma. Ideas such as vibration, frequency, manifestation, and interconnectedness are transforming the spiritual lexicon of our time. This period is not solely about self-exploration. It represents a collective awakening aimed at advancing humanity through empathy, connection, and awareness.